Well, good morning.
Good morning.
I have to say, as we've been moving through this series on the fruits of the Spirit, I think self-control probably falls just behind patience, in my estimation, in terms of ones that are difficult to live up to. Certainly, we live in a society that does not really encourage self-control. In fact, we live in a culture that seems to encourage doing whatever you want, whenever you want to do it. And certainly, we see on the news all sorts of statistics on obesity and alcoholism and all sorts of things that plague our society. And yet, even as Christians, I think God calls us to a higher level of self-control. In 1 Corinthians, the end of chapter 9, Paul says this. Now, Paul has just been talking about how he strives to become all things to all people, to find some way of connecting to everyone he comes across, that he might at least have the chance to win some of them to Christ. And he goes on in verse 23, I do it all for the sake of the gospel, so that I may share in its blessings. Do you not know that in a race the runners all compete, but only one receives the prize? Run in such a way that you may win it. Athletes exercise self-control in all things. They do it to receive a perishable wreath, but we an imperishable one. So I do not run aimlessly, nor do I box as though beating the air, but I punish my body and enslave it, so that after proclaiming to others, I myself should not be disqualified. Now, Paul uses a great illustration here for self-control. Athletes. Now, many of us, at least, watch sports. We're in the middle of football season, baseball season has just ended, hockey season is just beginning, and many of us enjoy watching some of these sports. And in just a few months, we'll have the Winter Olympics. And there we actually get a little more information on some of the athletes, because when you're watching the Olympics, often they will do interviews and kind of give you a life story on some of the competitors. And we realize how dedicated these athletes are to their sport. Many giving up things that the rest of us just take for granted, like sleeping in the morning, or spending time with family. There are some other countries where at a very young age, the athletes are sent away from their families to train in camps. And so they give up even that. But most serious athletes give up other things, like overeating, like being couch potatoes, because they are dedicated to their sport. Now, why are they dedicated to their sport? Well, there's another question. In some cases, they're looking for that achievement, that gold medal, that championship. Maybe they're even looking further ahead, and if they achieve that, it'll create opportunities for them for endorsements or being commentators and having a career. But still, it's all temporary stuff. And yet, they dedicate their lives. We, many of us, don't have that thing which we are so dedicated to that we're willing to sacrifice to achieve it. Now, there might be little things like I shared with the kids, the canoe or the big screen TV or whatever it is for you that You put a little money away, but we don't dedicate our lives to it. And what Paul is saying here is, here we have this example of these athletes that sacrifice so much, and in his case now, they didn't have endorsement deals, they didn't have commentators. They were competing in Paul's day just for a wreath, a victory wreath, to wear on their heads and to say, I am the greatest. Not much compared to what God offers us. And that's what Paul is saying is, these athletes are a good example for us because they sacrifice, they put aside a lot of their personal wants and desires in order to go after something greater. We have something even greater, something eternal. We have a God who loves us and who wants us to serve him, who wants us to follow him, who created us and knows what is best for us. Because we certainly don't. And he calls us to set aside some of the temptations, some of the things that call to us from this world. In fact, in Galatians, where we have taken this list of fruits of the Spirit, just before he gives the list of the fruits of the Spirit, he talks about all of the things of the flesh, all the things of this world that take us off track. And then he says, but for you should follow the Spirit and the gifts of the Spirit, against which there is no law. So if you look at this list of the gifts that we have been talking about, he's saying there's no law against any of these. These are all good things. These are all wholesome things. These are all things that will help you to live a fuller and more abundant life with me. And self-control, being able to set aside those desires which the world throws at us continuously, to focus on something greater, on the kingdom. And as I was thinking about this concept this week, a story came to my mind which I really hadn't thought of in this context before. But Jesus told a story about a man with two sons, an older one and a younger one. And at some point, the younger son came to his father and said, you know, Dad, I'm tired of following your rules. I'm tired of living under the rules of your household. I want to go and do my own thing. So just give me what is owed to me. Give me my portion of the inheritance, and I'll be out of your hair. So for whatever reason, the father says, well, fine. Here is your portion of the inheritance. Do what you feel is right. And the son goes off and lives a completely control-less life. He goes and wastes his time and his money on all of those things that Paul calls the things of the flesh. His older brother, however, is the picture of self-control. He stays at home, in Dad's house. He follows all of his father's rules. He does all the things that are good and right. But then, the day comes when the younger son has run out of money and a famine hits the land where he's living. So, really, nobody has much extra to help him with. But somebody gives him a job, slopping the pigs. And one day, as he's slopping the pigs and he's he's thinking to himself, wow, this stuff that I'm feeding the pigs actually is starting to look pretty good. And then it occurs to him, the servants in my father's house have plenty of food to eat. Maybe I should just go home and offer myself as a servant to my father. I'm no longer worthy to be called his son. I'll offer myself as a servant. And he goes home. And he hasn't even gotten home yet. He's still a long way down the road when his father, who's been standing at the end of the driveway, perhaps every day since his son left, just waiting to see if he might come home. His father sees him a long way off and runs to him and throws his arms around him and welcomes him home. And the son begins to say, but Dad, I really don't deserve this. But before he can even get the words out of his mouth, the father is giving orders to servants. Bring the fatted calf, bring my best robe and a ring for his finger. Let's celebrate because my son, who was lost, has been found. He is home again. But then, the older son, the one who has seemed to be self-controlled all along, comes in from the field where he has been doing his job, and he hears the commotion at home. He hears the music and the singing and the revelry, and he stops the servant and he says, what's going on? Well, your brother has come home, and your father has killed the fatted calf, and they're celebrating because your brother who was lost has been found. Well, the older brother isn't happy. He's not glad to see his younger brother returning home. He says, all this time, I've been following the rules. I've been doing what I should be doing. And he never killed the fatted calf for me. He never invited my friends over for a big party. You see, the older brother is many of us. In fact, that's the reason Jesus told this story, was not so much the younger brother. That's what we like to focus on. But he really was telling this story to the older brothers. And this older brother, he was doing the right thing. He was self-controlled, but not for the right reasons. He was self-controlled because he was trying to earn his father's love. He was hoping that if I just do the right thing, maybe he'll throw me a party. And so when his brother, the one who threw caution to the wind, who didn't follow any of the rules, recognizes that this free lifestyle isn't working for him. And he turns around, he returns to the father, and he offers to be his servant. The older brother becomes jealous. You see, the older brother has been trying to earn a love he already had. His father already loved him. His father already was willing to give him everything. But he still thought he had to earn it. And so he was being self-controlled, but not to bring glory to his father, but to try and earn something he already had. And I think that is the struggle that we often get caught up in, is we look at these fruits of the Spirit and we struggle and I want to do this. Ah, I messed it up again. I can't believe that I know what I should be doing and I just can't seem to do it. But see, that is really the point of these fruits of the Spirit, is that they are fruits of the Spirit. They're not something that we can conjure up on our own. They're not something that we can just set our minds to. And that's part of the problem. When there are things that we want in the smaller scope, we can, in the short term, sacrifice a little bit to try and achieve what we want. But in what God calls us to, it's hard for us. It's hard for us to sacrifice what we think is our due, what we think is what we deserve, in order to do what God calls us to do. And yet, He calls us to do it. But what we need to remember is, it is His Spirit that empowers us. We can't do it on our own. He doesn't expect us to do it on our own. But we have to remember, we have to keep in mind that we need to ask for His Spirit to fill us, for His Spirit to strengthen us, for His Spirit to give us the will to do what He calls us to do. To give us the strength and the courage to not follow the world, to not go after all of those fleshly desires, whatever they may be, but to keep our focus on Him, and to do that which He has called us to do. In Jesus' name, amen.